This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and the things you struggle with most so you can have more energy and less decision fatigue about what to eat, how to move, and so you can change your thoughts to flip 50 with the life and the energy you love in this second half. And today, I feel like maybe I should have said, and with your partner, potentially, but I will let our guests say more about that. Nicole DiRocco, founder of datingwithgrace.me, by the way, we'll mention that again later, is devoted to helping executive women have the confidence and skills to attract a healthy, extraordinary, loving relationship. A recovering human resources executive, Nicole is a certified dating and relationship coach, blogger, and global speaker. Nicole's gone through the rigorous credentialing process through the International Coach Federation. And for listeners who don't know what that means, let me describe to you that in this world we're in 2018, as we do this live, coaches are coming out of the woodwork of all kinds. And there are all kinds of coaching programs and certifications. What it means to be credentialed by the International Coach Federation means that Nicole has gone through a pretty rigorous coaching program, graduated, and then on top of that has gone through another pretty extensive International Coach Federation process in order to be recognized and credentialed. That's a big deal. It sets her apart in a big way. In case you're not familiar, it matters. Nicole also writes for Huffington Post, Prime Women, Digital Romance, and Dating Advice, and is featured in Bustle. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Thanks, Deborah, for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
So I'm excited about your background a little bit, and I'm sure there's some dirt here. So I'm always eager to dive into the dirt. So first of all, what led you to be a recovering human resources person and become a relationship coach? I know you have some kind of a little story. So tell us why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah. So, I think about, it was coming up on a milestone birthday a few years ago, and I thought I'd spent 25 years in the corporate world, and I thought there has to be more. What's my purpose in life? And I had always been interested in coaching. Coaching is about helping people. It's facilitating the self-discovery process. And one day I had an epiphany and I thought, that's it. My purpose is to be of service to others. Coaching is about just that. And so I went back into the master's program in organizational behavior and coaching. And as you said earlier, became credentialed and but for me personally, I started an executive leadership coaching practice, and there I began to notice that the women were really floundering in their personal relationships. So what made them successful in the work environment are things like directing and taking the lead, which are male attributes, which in matters of the heart fall flat on men. And so I was also on my own personal journey because I wasn't getting the results that I wanted in dating and relationships. And I just, I went and I started working with a relationship coach myself. And it was there that I discovered that all of this time I had been unknowingly taking away a man's motivation to pursue me. And so I had to learn how to lean back and to be a gracious receiver of a man's pursuit. I also had to really embrace my femininity. It was there, but it was being masked by a lot of masculine. And again, in fairness, that's what we have to do to get recognized and rewarded. But I also, had my own struggles with low self-esteem and self-image as a young girl. I overcame, a challenge with my weight. I had yo-yo dieting and I started dieting when I was 9 years old. So not at the direction of, not on my own, but at the direction of my pediatrician. And I hated going to the doctor every year, because then my mother would know how much I weighed. And she was very hard on me about my weight, which of course manifested ultimately in low self-esteem and self-image. And, along the way, of course, reflected, that also showed up in how the men that I chose in life. So, fast forward, I can say I've been there and done it. I've figured it out. I've done the inner work. And so this is really the highest and best use of my calling today, is to help other women. And this is something I'm very passionate about.
Wow. I love that. That's quite a story. And, I have to say that, women come to me for fitness. So all of our listeners can recognize probably that's how we found each other, and glad we did.
Yes.
Fitness, the nutrition. And yet whenever you're working with one of those areas of wellness, social relationships, finance, the rest tend to come out, because we are this integrated whole. So this is not foreign, hearing about this, but I do know that it's a challenge for midlife women looking for a relationship today.
Yeah.
Not only because of the history that you mentioned, very similarly, some of us probably are still harboring that, that little girl,
That's right,
who has weight to lose, and we still don't recognize ourselves when we see ourselves in the mirror somewhere else today. But now we're also juggling work, juggling family obligations. So eliminating obstacles is really important. Aside from the logistics of time and limited opportunity to bump into somebody, there are other obstacles like self-confidence, and it's been potentially a long time since the dating game. How does a woman get herself back into the game?
Yeah. That's such a great question, because, first I always look to see if a woman's intention and behavior to have a committed relationship is in alignment. And so there's two things that a woman does first when she's intent on having a committed relationship. The first is that she keeps her word to herself. So when you decide that you want to be married or in a committed relationship, you've got to own it. And you've got to accept the intention and keep your word to yourself that you're going to do whatever it takes to have a committed relationship. So that means you can't go back on your word and make exceptions. You can't do things that go against your initial intention, because you'll detour, and that's going to take you a lot longer to get back on track. And it also sends mixed messages. So the first stage of commitment, if you want a relationship, is that you have to understand how commitment works. And at the base, it starts with you. So how good are you at keeping your word to yourself? And the second piece here.
Okay, red flag.
Yes.
Can I interrupt here? So I am like scribbling like mad. I'm like, let me talk. You can't see my hand up over here, by the way. Okay. So anybody listening out there, feeling like their nose is itching or anything? So, there is that keeping your word to yourself. So immediately, of course, as an exercise fitness coach, one of the things we've talked about here on this show, and a really good friend of mine, also a coach in wellness, gave me these words. So Sherry, I'm talking about you if you happen to be listening, but when we were talking one day, she said, I broke my promise to myself. I lied to myself. And we were speaking about, doing yoga or doing weight training or actually getting started in a walking program at the time. So are we talking about the same level? So immediately a fitness coach goes there, but that's kind of the first step, just in any way, shape, or form, whether it might be making exercise or going to bed on time or eating right changes. Those kinds of commitments are part of this.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
I'm now jumping up and down just because you can't see that either.
Well, and then when I started by saying that her intention and behavior has to be in alignment. So the second component of this is that her behavior has to match her intention. So your behavior needs to demonstrate to men that you date and to everybody else that you're preparing your life to have love in it. And so translated, that means you aren't going to do things that aren't supporting that. It means you're not hiding behind work as an excuse not to put yourself in situations to meet men, or waiting until your kitchen is remodeled to start dating, or once the kids are out of college. So that's a way of being that actually keeps you safe. And it also means that you're not distancing yourself from a man and only making yourself available in small doses. So those are behaviors that don't serve you well. So I always say, ask yourself, would I do this if I were in a committed relationship right now? And you know the old saying, Deborah, that says, act as if you're already in a committed relationship. And when you do this, the behaviors that go with being in a committed relationship will reveal themselves. So it's manifesting, right? It's really the gist of that.
Love that. Wow. Act as if. I'm definitely holding on to that one. Okay. So, you said something interesting, and I had to duck a little bit, I think, about using work or hiding behind work. We can get a lot of self-identity from our work. We all know how much time we spend there, want to or not, unfortunately. How can a woman define herself beyond her work?
Yeah, for a lot of smart, successful, professional women, her identity is tied to her role as an executive or professional, both socially and culturally, right? And so that level of identity is significant. And you take it away, and it can be devastating. When we align our identity to a role and imagine if the role were taken away, we really do a disservice to ourselves. So it's important to keep in mind that as you're building your love of self, of how much as a woman you're putting stock into a label that society has constructed. So it's when you start to value yourself and not the role that you're playing, it's in being who you are is so much more than your job. And then you really begin to recognize how powerful you really are. So there's a tool that I use with my clients, and it's called the Great Things About Me exercise. So because it can be, really hard to acknowledge all of the great qualities that we have, and it gets to be really easy to be critical of ourselves. So I ask my clients to interview 3 of their biggest fans and to ask them the top 5 things that they love and appreciate about them. And to be really specific. So it can't be, well, I like you because you're a good friend. Well, what makes me a good friend, right? And then I ask them to look at that list and to choose, kind of 3 to 5 similar qualities that are mentioned. And that's a great way to kind of like, oh, wow, I didn't think, other people thought this about me. And it's a great way to, if you're having a bad day, I just say, put it up on the bathroom mirror and kind of look at it. It's a great pick me up, but it's a great way to say, I'm more than, I'm more than an accountant. I'm more than a mom. There's so much more to me than what I do for a quote unquote living.
Oh, I love that. The Great Things About Me exercise. Interestingly enough, I was a health teacher at a university for about 15 years. And one of the courses I taught by accident, really, we had an awful lot of courses that needed to be offered. So sections got passed around pretty easily if you were willing to put your hand up. But in those courses, I would ask during a certain section of the course, I would ask students to fill out and do a similar exercise. Do a quick, list 10 things, that you don't like about yourself, 10 flaws. And then we would flip it, and we'd kind of see how many they got. And they didn't know this yet. And then I'd ask them the opposite. Write down 10 things you like about yourself. And you could just see pens stall in the air. Extremely hard. Everybody's writing consistently for the whole time, in the flaws. But when you ask them to write down the things they like, so it starts early, really early. Okay, now I've got a two-part question here. So what are some of the challenges your clients, those smart, successful, executive, professional women face in their love life and relationships, but more importantly, how do they overcome them?
Well, I think, I alluded to it earlier, and that is that she takes on the same attributes that get recognized and rewarded in a business setting, like directing, like taking the lead, which are male attributes, and she applies them in her love life and her relationships outside of work. And frankly, alpha men don't want to date a dude in a skirt. They don't want to date other alphas. And so, and that's just it, is that these are alpha females who do want to date they want to date alpha men. So for women, it's quite challenging because unlike men who are wired to compartmentalize, women will either have no awareness of how these behaviors are impacting her relationships outside work, or she'll find it difficult to shut off. The other piece here is that she has an attitude of, men are intimidated by me as a smart, successful woman. And that's actually an attitude that doesn't serve her, because the thought of believing that men are intimidated by her is something that she's actually given herself permission to believe. And here's why. Because believing it makes it all about the men, and it's their problem and their fault, and it takes responsibility away from her. So it's actually not a true statement that men are put off by independent, smart, successful women. What men are turned off by is a woman's invulnerability. And to be invulnerable means to be incapable of being wounded, hurt, damaged. So it's more than emotional vulnerability. And I'm not talking about being weak or needy. So here's a way that she can course correct in this area. When we offer a man the chance to guide, when we ask him for his opinion, when we empower him by listening to him and welcoming his suggestions, those are all ways that we show vulnerability. And so really, many times smart, successful, independent women, we're so accustomed to doing it ourselves. We're the CEO of our lives. If we need something done, no one else is going to do it except for us. So that means that we have to create opportunities for a man to be needed. And oftentimes she's giving off a vibe that there's no place for a man in her life because she does do everything. So you've got to consciously create those opportunities, and that's why he sticks around.
Interesting. And without getting complicated here, I don't want to, and yet I do feel the need, because I know I've got a wide variety in the audience. So whether this is complicated by being male, female, and alpha, or are many of these things also true in same-sex kinds of relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, and we all, regardless of sexual orientation, we all have feminine, we all have masculine within us. Some are just more pronounced than others.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So, balance is a hot topic. So we're looking actually for kind of a balance in our lives, because I know that I feel this push and pull with my significant other with, okay, I've got to put this hat on. I got to pull my big girl skirt on. I'm making this decision and having these meetings and running the show and working the finances and the spreadsheet. And then, I've got to put this other hat on, and sometimes it's a challenge to flip that switch. So I can wrestle with that. So in one way, finding a balance, it feels good to trust someone enough to be vulnerable with them, because I think you can't always do that at work. You don't always feel that you've got those kind of business partners, at least. But we talk about balance in so many ways, not just juggling the alpha and the beta, if that's the other word, but it's also filled with controversy, finding balance in life. How does a woman create more balance, or better yet, prioritize caring for herself? If you've got some juicy
absolutely.
suggestions there.
The number one priority has got to be you. Not your significant other, not work, not your parent. This is how to keep yourself centered and strong in your self-awareness. And so, another tool that I use is, and it doesn't cost anything, it's called a calendar. And I schedule all of my me time on my calendar. So think about the things that we put on the calendar. We put everything on the calendar. We put the kids, school events, we put parent-teacher conferences, we put, parties, etc. So why not schedule your me time? So schedule your yoga time, your painting class, the journaling, the photography, whatever it might be for you. And I don't know about you, Deborah, but I find that when I write it down, it's more likely to happen. The other thing I think is really helpful here is to have an accountability partner, whether that's a friend, a family member, a coach, and tell that person, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do yoga every Thursday at 10 a.m. And would you let me know? Would you ask me if I've done that? That's so important. We're more likely, when we put it out to the universe, we're more likely to do it, right? And the other part here is learning to ask for help to do things. So can you pick up the kids from school? Can you pick up items from the grocery store? So, getting away from this, I have to do it all myself, what a gift it is that we give to others when we allow them to help us. So
I love that you've said that. Yeah, we're definitely soul sisters here. I love that. So hearing that, and this is so funny. So very recently, I was at a workshop, and we are in Flipping 50. We are implementing actually what you've just said in programs. So as soon as someone gets into a new program, we're going to ask them actually to share this with their world, with their friends, and say, I'm starting this 28-day program. Would you, if you see me slacking, ask me how it's going? So reinforcing, asking for help. So love that. And asking for what we need in a way that's very specific. I like to come back to, it's a piece of exercise science, actually, and asking for support as you're going through behavior change. But sometimes we get that wrong because we don't ask for exactly what we need. We just say, I'm doing this. Could you support me? And sometimes you end up getting a nag, which is intentionally, a support, but it may not be what you need. So you've got to say, to somebody, literally kick me in the butt, kick me out the door, if that's what you need. But if you need, on the other hand, a gentle, hey, how's it going? How can I help you? You've got to ask for that.
Well, and that's such a great, it reminds me of, I use the same approach about being specific with my clients on when I'm working with them to diversify their dating portfolio as an example, which means that there's got to be a lot of different ways that you're meeting others and meeting prospective people to date or be in relationship with. We have our dating fairy godmothers. And what I mean by that is when we go out and we say to people, hey, could you, I'm in the market, I'm looking. And if you have a friend, could you, introduce me to him? Could you introduce me to her? And so generally that kind of falls flat. Nothing ever comes of that because you're not being specific enough. And so I work with my clients to paint the picture of what this person looks like and list your top 2 or 3 values. Not that he's 6 foot tall or has a Harvard MBA. It's your values. Hey, Mary, I'm looking for to be introduced, and I'm really excited to meet someone who is family focused, who's responsible, who is, well read. And if you happen to know somebody like that, I would love to be introduced to him. So in that way, you're being very specific. And now Mary knows to be looking for somebody. She's not going to introduce you to somebody who doesn't read, right? Because you've just told her reading is important. So.
Very cool. Love that. Okay, so we've been talking to the relationship expert, all right, and we know that starts at home, caring for ourselves, better relationship with ourselves. So how do you, Nicole, how do you define extreme self-care for yourself, and how does it relate to attracting?
Yeah, so this is
love
really
from the inside out?
what I personally practice and work with my clients on, and extreme self-care is doing things that make you happy. So, for example, I set my intention a couple of years ago, and it just continues on to each year, that I want to have a joyful life. And I want to do things that bring me joy. So I took up painting because I just wanted to do something creative again. And I'm really passionate about wine. And so I took a whole semester at a local college on the study of grapes and winemaking. And then on the heels of that course, I did a whole food and wine excursion through Provence. And so when I do things that bring me joy, I attract joy. And so these are things that are meaningful for me. This is how I take care of myself. And, in the context of dating and relationships, a man sees a woman who is happy, or in another type of situation, and he just wants to make her happier. She's radiant. She radiates feminine energy and grace. And so what are those loving things that you can do for yourself, And what could you do today that would feel delightful or delicious to you? How can you find joy in serving someone in an unexpected way? These are all ways that we practice extreme self-care. And again, happiness is an inside job. And you can't assign anyone else that much power over your life. Because if you're looking to another person to make you happy, not only is that a repellent to somebody else, it's a lot of responsibility to place on another. So it starts within, and it starts with extreme self-care.
Love that. I really love that. And, from the fitness side of things, probably more common for me to hear something like, I will, I'll start doing this when I lose the weight, as opposed to I'm going to start doing this so that I lose the weight, so that I, and it becomes, you're doing the activities you love, adding joy to your life, and then also probably increasing your activity level that you will lose the weight. So it's becoming happy first before you attract what you really want. So you're going to level up while you're doing it and attract more of the person that you are and or want to be in the future. Nicole, it's been so great to talk to you. I, asked this hardest question last for all my guests. So is there a question that you wish I would have asked you?
That's a great question. I think about, just what makes me qualified to have these kinds of conversations with people about relationships. And that is that, one of my top personal values is a commitment to personal growth and development. And we can't get better at relationships unless we're in relationships. And so, really around vulnerability and being connected to others is something that I have also had challenges with over time. But I had to dig deep and do that inner work, and really deep, and to love myself and to like myself. So, I guess the question would have been, well, Nicole, have you done this? Have you done this work? Have you walked the walk? And the answer is yes, absolutely, I have.
Love that. Love that. All right. And last but not least, Nicole, let's make sure that I have this correct. So listeners who want more of Nicole can reach you at, do I have this right? datingwithgrace.me. Awesome. Okay. And I understand you have something to give away.
Yes, I would love to. This is my most popular book. It's called 3 Hot Tips to Successful Dating in the 21st Century. I learned how to lean back and to be a gracious receiver of a man's pursuit using technology to my advantage. And it's not manipulative, but there is a way to get a person to step up and to treat you like the high value woman that you are when it comes to texting, when it comes to email. And so I would love to be able to give that to as many listeners as are interested.
Fantastic. Nicole, thanks so much for being here. And I should tell listeners, the reason Nicole and I met was actually a Prime Woman event. So if you're not reading primewomen.com, you can read a little bit more from me and a little bit more from Nicole both, as well as some really great information also filtered exactly for you and I. So if you have a question that I didn't ask Nicole that you'd like to submit, leave it below the show link at flipping50.com and join us on the Flipping 50 TV Facebook page. To get all the juicy resources and the links that I mentioned in the show notes, visit today's episode at flipping50.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating in iTunes. And then share this with a friend to surround yourself with a supportive community of women on the same journey. What are you waiting for? Let's start Flipping 50 today.